You awoke slowly, the dense scent of aged papyrus and melting wax curling around you like a thick mist in the cramped stone chamber where you had slept. Your bare feet touched the cold, uneven floor, a sharp shock that seeped through your skin and settled deep into your bones. Flickering torchlight quivered against the walls, casting elongated shadows that stretched and recoiled, as if alive and watching. The heavy humidity clung to your tired skin, sticky and unrelenting, muting the harsh sunlight that had yet to break the horizon. In that moment, you felt an unshakable knowing. Today was unlike all the others. Today, the Pharaoh's deadly Senet game awaited your complete focus, a ritual wrapped in silence and hidden peril. Your hands itched beneath the rough linen of your tunic, impatient and trembling, while you gathered the worn wooden pieces, their faded colors whispering stories of countless past attempts. The polished bone dice glided slowly through your fingers, rubbed smooth by the dull repetition of days blending into nights. You placed each piece on the cracked board with deliberate care, feeling the coldness of the wood seep into your palms as ancient patterns caught the faint torchlight. Every tiny scrape against the surface echoed a soft clink that seemed weighted with unspoken gravity. Around you, a profound silence settled, broken only by the faint sigh of wind weaving through marble columns, far beyond your reach. The pieces before you were no mere game elements. They were silent carriers of your fate, the thin thread between survival and oblivion. The dull monotony of the ritual began to enfold you, a slow and steady ebb of hope mixed with creeping unease. You repeated each movement, rolling dice, adjusting pieces, steadying your breath, as if the routine itself could tip the scales. The game's rules were simple, yet every turn carried a heavy uncertainty. Each breath drawn measured against the possibility of final failure. If today's Senet was like any before it, the muted tension would build not in sudden bursts, but through endless, meticulous inches. You thought briefly of the modern world, how small frustrations now could unravel a day. A dead phone battery, a missed message. Back here, if you lost your last scrap of firewood, it meant cold, darkness, and silence swallowing you whole. Those fleeting comforts, light, warmth, certainty, felt impossibly distant in the stale air. Your fingers hesitated just for a moment as you slid a piece forward, the dry scrape against the board sounding impossibly loud. The shadow of impending challenge wavered at the edges of your mind, just as a faint, collective breath seemed to stir somewhere beyond the chamber's walls. You paused, the room suddenly alive with a subtle shift, a ripple through the quiet presence of watchers unseen. The tension was not visible, yet it settled like a second skin. A new, unexpected variable had entered this ancient dance, veiled in the silent masses that surrounded your trial. Before your mind could decipher what had changed, a whisper of movement edged in the darkness. The weight of countless eyes pressed lightly but firmly. The air thickened and the game deepened. Hey, before Morpheus fully takes you under, do a quick check to make sure you're still subscribed. For some, the button has vanished, and I don't want you to miss the next stories to drift off with. Take a moment and leave a soft like a pillow. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Your interaction keeps this little corner of calm alive. Thanks for being part of it. You hold your breath as the soft shifting of shadows around you grows heavier, as if the very darkness itself is bending closer, tightening its invisible grip. The air, thick with anticipation, presses lightly against your skin, a slow, persistent weight that seems to pulse in sync with your heartbeat. Your fingers tremble, just enough to remind you, this game is no longer just a test of the mind, but a delicate balance of nerves and subtle perception. Your hand hovers over the Senet board, the worn pieces resting like ancient sentinels, waiting for your next move. The polished bone of the dice glints faintly in the flickering torchlight, smooth and cold beneath your skin. You lift them with a deliberate slowness, feeling their familiar texture roll between your fingertips before settling them back onto the board. Every motion is methodical, ritualistic. Each scrape of wood against stone reverberates softly in the stillness, a slow hymn to the unyielding passage of time. The room seems to contract as you slide a piece forward, the dry whisper of its movement echoing louder in your ears than it should. Your eyes dart to the marble columns framing the chamber's entrance, half expecting a flicker of motion, a glimpse of the unseen watchers whose silent breath you feel fluttering just beyond your reach. The shadows stretch and recoil like restless phantoms, their intangible presence weaving itself seamlessly into the dense glow of the torches. Another roll of the dice, slow and deliberate. You feel the grain of the smooth wood beneath your fingertips, coolness spreading like a whispered secret up your arm. The dice clatter softly against the board, their sound fragile yet significant. A tiny announcement, a quiet marker of your slow progress. You steady your breath, feeling the weight of countless eyes, both seen and unseen, pressing through the heavy air. A faint murmur, like the distant rustling of silken robes, ere the careful shuffle of sandals on stone, slips through the doorway and folds into the stillness. You trace the path of a piece, inch by inch, relishing the sensation of cracked wood beneath your nails, the tiny imperfections and splinters, a tactile map of countless previous attempts. The scent of dust, mixed with faint traces of incense, fills your nostrils, grounding you in the fragile present. Sweat beads at your forehead, cool and incongruous in its persistence, clinging to your temples and neck like a stubborn reminder of the stakes. With measured care, you lean closer to the board. The flame-light glimmers in your eyes, soft and warm, offering a fleeting comfort against the creeping anxiety that coils quietly within you. The chill of the chamber floor seeps into your souls, anchoring you in a physical reality that contrasts sharply with the abstract burden carried by these faded wooden pieces. Each move, slow and pondered, hangs in the balance like a whispered prophecy. You cannot afford haste here. The game demands the patience of a stone wall enduring centuries of wind and sand. The pattern of the board, worn smooth by fingers long gone, catches the light in subtle relief. The symmetry of squares, the faded symbols etched deep into the wood, serve as both guide and warning. You slide another piece forward, the small clack against the board reverberating loudly in the echoing chamber. Your chest rises and falls in slow rhythm, syncing with the age-old pulse of the ritual. The murmur outside swells faintly, as if the unseen assembly holds its collective breath alongside you. A breeze slips through the marble columns, carrying with it the faint aroma of dry earth and distant river reeds. Your skin prickles as the cool whisper brushes over your arms, an involuntary shiver that travels the length of your spine. The moment stretches, a fragile thread binding your senses to the ancient space around you, a blend of quiet tension and muted reverence. You hold your hand poised above the next move, fingers curled but still, feeling the invisible weight of expectation pulling at your resolve. The pieces before you begin to blur softly, the flicker of torchlight coaxing shadows to dance lazily over their surfaces. You withdraw your hand and take a breath, slow and deliberate, the sound heavy in the silence. The chamber seems to breathe with you, the quiet presence of watchers folded into every grain of stone and flicker of light. The air carries a faint hum, the collective heartbeat of that unseen multitude. You become aware of something shifting, minute yet undeniable, a subtle movement in the shadowed periphery of your vision. Your pulse quickens imperceptibly, but you do not move. Instead, your senses sharpen, attuned to the smallest detail. The faint brush of fabric against stone, the slight adjustment of a still figure, the almost inaudible creaking of a sandal on the floor. The game has changed, or perhaps you have. A fresh, unseen element now threads through the ritual, unseen eyes observing not just your moves, but the very cadence of your breath. You return your attention to the board, the unsaid weight of countless trials pressing down. The dice rest silent, like dormant stars, the wooden pieces frozen mid-journey. Your hand trembles ever so slightly before reaching out once more, slow, measured, deliberate. The contact of wood on wood is a soft murmur, a delicate shuffle that sends a ripple across the stillness. The board surface beneath your fingers is rougher now, the fissures catching the light like tiny cracks in a long-lived facade. Behind the walls, somewhere beyond the pillars, the faint murmur of voices rises again. Unlike before, there is an urgent undertone, not loud or sharp, but threaded with a strange, almost reverent tension. The atmosphere thickens, the unsaid becoming tangible, a silent current pulling you deeper into the unfolding mystery. A subtle hum floats through the air, a distant sound that might be wind or might be something else entirely. Your breath slows as the game stretches on, the delicate balance between hope and dread threading through each movement. With one careful slide, you move a piece near the board's edge, the sound sharp in the silence, resonating like a slow burn declaration. The faintest flicker of movement in the shadows catches your eye. Ah, resting breath held just beyond revelation. In that suspended moment, as time elongates and the chamber feels endless, you sense it, the stillness before a deliberate, unspoken shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something unseen steps forward from the darkness, its presence a quiet promise folded into the night, waiting to unveil the next thread of the Pharaoh's game. You keep your hand poised just above the board, the faint tremor of anticipation settling deep into your bones like a low, humming pulse. The air feels denser now, almost viscous, pressing gently against your skin with a slow, persistent weight that seems to stretch time itself. The flickering torches nearby cast wavering silhouettes along the cracked walls, and each shadow moves as if entwined with the quiet breath of unseen watchers. You feel them, countless, patient eyes threading through the darkness. Beyond the marble columns, their presence a tapestry of tension and silent expectation, woven tightly into the stillness. Your fingers brush lightly over a wooden piece, rough and cool to the touch, its edges worn smooth by hands long past. You lift it slowly, deliberately, feeling the grain beneath your skin, the tiny splinters, the faint hint of ancient varnish that clings to the surface like a whisper from centuries ago. The scrape of the wood as it shifts against the board seems to echo in the chamber, louder than reason dictates, reverberating off the stone with a fragile intensity. The weight of this simple motion hangs heavy, clasping your chest in its slow rhythm. Outside the chamber, a low murmur brushes against your ears, a soft, drawn-out weaving of voices, mingled with the rustle of fabric and the distant scrape of sandals on worn stone. The sound drifts in as a gentle wave, seeping through the gaps between the columns, filling the space with a subtle vibrancy that both soothes and unnerves. You close your eyes briefly, letting the ambivalent sounds fill the space behind your eyelids, grounding you in the fragile present while the shadows pulse softly around you. The scent of dust and ancient incense swirls through the damp air, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of cooled sweat that collects along your hairline. You breathe slowly, deeply, the coolness of the stone floor beneath your bare feet, grounding you amid the invisible tension. Your muscles tense and release in gentle waves with every measured breath, a rhythm older than memory itself. Your movements remain cautious, mindful of the silence, each shift deliberate as a fragile thread connecting you to the vast expanse of time enclosed in this chamber. You let your fingers glide over the polished bone dice again, feeling their cool smoothness, the weight balanced perfectly between your fingertips. They return to the board like tiny, lifeless oracles, and you roll them out once more, the soft clatter like a slow chime in the muted stillness. The numbers revealed bring a cautious sense of progress, but with it, an immediate tightening in your chest. Every turn in this ritual is soaked in quiet menace, a measured step where miscalculation slips silently toward peril, where hope flickers like a distant flame against the black tide. Your gaze drifts to the pillars framing the chamber door, their smooth marble exteriors doubled in the dim light by smudges and faint cracks, telling stories of centuries long endured. You sense the watchers shifting just beyond, breaths held, eyes narrowing, the collective presence a dense fog settling atop your skin. The cool draft slipping between the columns carries a faint pulse, a subtle vibration in the air that you cannot yet place, a silent herald lurking just out of sight. Sweat beads grow slow and steady along your temple, cold and slippery, mingling with the dry dust on your cheek. The sensations travel downward as a cool trace along your neck and arms, each tiny shiver a reminder of the delicate balance you maintain. The monotony of the movements, repeated infinitely, slide, pause, breathe, beckons your senses to drown in the endless details. The grain of the wood, the fading hieroglyphs carved into the board, the dim gleam of the flickering flames reflected in the glossy surface of the dice. Gradually, the murmur outside grows faintly louder, threading through the silence with a strange hum that humbles and unsettles in equal measure. It is a sound you can follow easily, but it swells as if carrying a secret urgency, a slow ripple in the stagnant air. Your breath catches, subtle but unmistakable, as the space seems to contract further, the unseen eyes closing ranks closer to the threshold. The chamber feels alive, a living entity breathing with you, watching alongside you, and pressing its weight like a shroud. At the very edge of your vision, a movement, the dark shape that does not fully form. The shadows fold over themselves, softening and thickening in complex layers, as if something steps halfway from the depths of night to stand just beyond perception. Your heart beats with an almost imperceptible quickening, a whispered thrum against the tide of calm you've so painstakingly nurtured. You breathe out slowly, through your mouth, your lips parting just enough to release the tension held in your chest. The hand that slides forward trembles lightly, touching the board with feather-light intent. Wood slides across wood, a soft, creeping sound that fills the chamber like a breath held for centuries. You watch the piece settle, the faint scrape sharp in the silent reverberation, and then stillness returns like a heavy blanket. For a moment, the waiting deepens, the chamber poised on a razor's edge. The air shivers with expectancy, the shadows clustering tightly where torchlight dares not reach. Then, from the dark beyond the pillars, a slow, deliberate exhalation breaks the silence. A breath, soft but charged, like the turning of a key in a hidden lock. You feel it touch you first in your bones, then rise sharply in your throat. And then you know, the game has just drawn its long, silent breath, and the next move awaiting your hand will be one not only of chance, but of fate. Something unseen has entered the ritual, shifting the very fabric of the night. You keep your hand hovering just above the board, hesitant, yet compelled, the weight of unseen eyes pushing down like a silent tide. The worn wood of the Senet pieces feels impossibly solid beneath your skin, the edges smoothed from centuries of touch, each grain and nick a faint echo of lives, long past, and countless games like this one, played in chambers swallowed by time. The flickering torchlight seems to pulse in tandem with your breath, casting wavering halos of warmth that barely break the chill hanging in the damp air. A spiderweb of fine cracks snakes across the stone floor beneath your feet, cool and unyielding against your bare soles. You shift your weight slowly, deliberately avoiding any sudden movement that might betray your presence to the watching shadows. The silence is thick, not empty, but alive, filled with the faint shimmer of expectation that curls around your skin like smoke. You allow your eyes to drift to the towering columns that frame the chamber's narrow entrance, their smooth marble veined with streaks of ochre and brown, worn dizzyingly smooth by uncounted hands of witnesses and participants of these timeless games. The murmur beyond the columns rises and falls like a distant chant, rhythmic but indistinct. Voices folded into one another like layers of fabric, softening under gentle touch. It is a breath held just beyond reach, a persistent vibration that threads itself through the stone and lingers in your bones. You breathe out slowly, the faint scent of dry earth and ancient sweat filling your nostrils, blending with the lingering trace of incense that curls lazily in the corners of the chamber. Time settles heavy and slow, dragging each second into an ocean of calm and dread. Carefully, you let your fingers close around one wooden piece, feeling the subtle imperfections, tiny splinters and worn edges, as if the touch could summon the memory trapped within the grain. You slide it forward, the dry scrape against the board, surprisingly loud, ringing through the stillness like a whispered incantation. Your chest tightens in response. The slow rhythm of the game holding you captive in the tender balance between control and surrender. A bead of cool sweat slips from your temple, tracing a line down to your jaw, mingling with the dust clinging softly to your skin. The dice rest heavy in your palm as you lift them once more. An ancient ritual of chance and fate suspended in your hand. Their smooth coolness feels paradoxically grounding and alien, a remnant of a world both immediate and impossibly distant. You roll slowly, the bones clattering softly over the board's surface, their sound delicate as the fall of a feather. The numbers revealed bring no certainty, only a quiet tightening in your chest. Each move inches the story forward, the ritual looping endlessly, weaving your thread tighter into the tapestry of inevitability. Your gaze flickers to the shadows pooling along the chamber walls. They flicker, swell, then shrink, almost breathing with their own slow cadence. You feel shapes beyond sight, figures dissolved into darkness, but present in every shift of silence, every hush between your measured breaths. The faint scrape of a sandal against stone, the whisper of fabric, the subtle shift of unseen bodies coalesces into a backdrop that presses gently against your skin, like thick velvet. Their patience weighs heavy, a tangible presence folded into the stone. From somewhere deep within the space, a faint draft rolls like a soft sigh over your arms, cool and unexpected against the sweat-slick heat of the chamber. You shiver, not from cold, but a primal awareness that those watching are no longer content simply to observe. The delicacy of your movements becomes sharp edges now, each slide of wood against wood, fraught with the burden of unseen calculation. Your fingers brush over the worn symbols etched into the board, faded hieroglyphs catching the torchlight in faint gleams, guiding your hand but offering no answers. You steady yourself, breathing slow and deep, feeling the rough floor beneath your feet, grounding you against the murmur of invisible eyes and the silence that tightens like a noose. The room seems to close in, walls bending imperceptibly, the air heavier with every heartbeat. Sweat chills against your back as the ancient ritual twists inward, the slow dance between chance and will becoming something charged, almost alive. Suddenly, without warning, a subtle shift disturbs the air, the soft brush of movement at the threshold, pulling your focus outward. The shadows at the entrance condense, thickening until the shapes of a figure, cloaked in darkness deeper than the rest, emerge almost spectrally. You do not flinch, though every nerve hums with urgent alertness. The ambient murmurs fade to a hush, the collective breath of countless unseen watchers held in suspended waiting. The figure's presence pulses silently, a dark wave rippling across the chamber's edge. You feel a draw, magnetic and suffocating, as if the air itself has folded in on your pulse. Your hand trembles. The next move poised, but unmade. The torchlight catches a glint, a whisper of something not yet revealed, promising both a test and a revelation, hidden beneath layers of shadow and time. And in this trembling moment, where the game and the watcher merge in a breathless pause, you realize that the next move will not merely shift the pieces on the board. It will shift the very rules of the game itself. You keep your hand suspended above the board, the slightest tremor rippling through your fingers, as though the ancient wood beneath them pulses with an unseen heartbeat. The dim torchlight flutters, casting restless shadows that fuse with the deep folds of darkness settled around the chamber's farthest corners. Your breath slows, deliberate, dilating the silence with a fragile rhythm that feels both sacred and utterly fragile. The worn edges of the Senet pieces, smooth in some places, chipped in others, press gently against your skin. You trace the grain with a slow finger, as if coaxing the past into the present moment. Each subtle splinter seems a tether to the hands that played this game before, hands that might have trembled with fear, hope, or unquestioning obedience. The scrape, as you nudge a piece forward, is a faint echo, echoing in the stone-cold air, louder and longer than it deserves, filling the chamber with the thin sound of time itself, counting down in exhalations. Your gaze flickers again toward the marble columns standing sentinel at the chamber's entrance. The shadows drape over them like threadbare cloaks, their surfaces mottled and cracked, worn by centuries and stories too faint to grasp. Beyond these pillars, you sense the quiet gathering of watchers, silent, patient, their presence a slow, heavy tapestry that settles upon your shoulders like woven ash. Not a breath escapes them, yet the slow pressure of eyes unseen is almost tactile, a delicate weight that wraps around the back of your neck and flows down your spine. The scent of dry earth and faint cedar smoke wafts in, with the occasional whisper of a shifting breeze, a cold brush along your bare arms. It feels wild and distant, incongruous in a chamber so wrapped in stillness. The flicker of flame casts light on the subtle webwork of tiny cracks snaking across the stone floor beneath your feet. You shift your weight slightly, the coolness pressing through the thin soles of your bare skin, grounding you just enough in the sharp reality behind the ritual's abstraction. The dice return to your palm, their smoothness like a pulse bridging the ancient and imminent. You feel their cool weight settle there, familiar yet foreign, as if they remember and expect something you cannot yet name. Roll. The soft clatter is deliberate, measured, like a whisper, meant only for this space. A muted chime that travels through the silence with reverence. The numbers it reveals brush against you like distant footsteps, retracing a path you have traveled 100 times, each step laden with an aching patience. You raise your eyes to the board, where faded hieroglyphs fracture under layers of dust and the weight of countless repetitions. The patterns feel both worn and alive, as if the very symbols breathe thin breath into the air around them. Your fingers glide over the pieces, the balance shifting once again. One piece moves forward, with the dragging scrape of wood sliding against wood. Each fraction of motion pronounced within the stillness, like a carefully spoken prayer. That murmuring beyond the chamber pulses stronger now, a low hum rising through the pillars. It blends with the soft rustling of fabric and the distant scrape of sandals against stone. Quiet, measured, persistent. You almost want to imagine it's the ritual's own heartbeat, a slow cadence beneath the breath of the watchers. Sweat, cool and unwelcome, trickles down your temple, drawing a final thread of tension you cannot ignore. The stale air tastes faintly of dust and dried sweat, mingling with that elusive hint of ancient incense carried faintly on the current. Your chest tightens as the room seems to constrict, the marble walls bending inward, inch by invisible inch. The very shadows incline closer like sentinels, leaning in to catch your every move. You hold your breath with them, stillness thickening like honey, a slow pulse throbbing behind your ribs. The seconds stretch and tangle, layered into a delicate weave of dread and quiet determination. Then, at the lip of your vision, the shadows ripple, a shape, just a breath of form, unfurling from the depths of darkness beyond the torchlight's reach. The air turns viscous, heavy and waiting. Something unseen steps closer, the pressure it carries folding into the fabric of the chamber, altering the rhythm of your breath and the very weight of the game. Your hand is caught in tacit hesitation, trembling against the ancient board. The shimmer of torchlight catches a glint, something not wood, not bone, still and tense, dark as the night wrapped around it. The watchers have shifted, the silent assembly folding tighter, their breath held too long, poised on the edge of revelation. You slide your piece forward, the wooden clack, sharp and stark. The sound echoes, and then absorbs, swallowed by the thick, hushed air. The silence swells, full and expectant, as if the chamber itself leans in to hear what comes next. The game is no longer just a test of skill or chance. It is a summoning, a slow unveiling of secrets that bind you deeper to this ancient place. In that trembling moment, the shadows breathe again, and a whispered exhalation breaks the silence. A promise and a warning wrapped into one silent breath. You know, with a certainty that chills you, that the next move will cross the threshold of the known and into something profoundly unseen. You hesitate for a heartbeat longer than usual, feeling the weight of unseen eyes coil tighter as they deepen their silent vigil. Your fingers hover, just above the board. The smooth wood of the Senet pieces, rough against your skin, worn from centuries of hands that played this very dance of chance and fate. The torchlight flickers low, casting shifting halos that seem to pulse with the rhythm of your breath. Each shadow stretching long and leaning in, as if eager to consume the next move. Your palm braces slightly as you lift one piece, slow and deliberate, tracing the grain with a tenderness that borders on reverence. The scrape it makes glides through the thick air, too loud, too intimate. You hold your breath, the sound resonating between the stone walls, a fragile note hung in a cathedral of silence. Behind the columns, you sense the watchers drawing closer, their collective presence, a quiet pressure pressing against your skin, as inevitable and endless as the desert's shifting sands. The air is dense here, thick with the musk of ancient incense and the slightest bitterness of sweat. Cool sweat clinging stubbornly to your temples, despite the humid stillness that envelops the chamber. It courses down your neck in slow rivulets, mingling with the dust and the chill that seeps from the stone beneath your bare feet, cold and unyielding like the past that refuses to release you. You lower the piece, steadying yourself with slow, measured breaths. The polished dice return to your palm, their smoothness a whisper against your skin. They spin softly between your fingers before settling back to the board, the tiny bones clicking with a muted clarity, each number a cryptic message, a step along the narrow path between hope and despair. The dice's cool weight is a brief comfort, a reminder that some things remain constant, even here. Beyond the threshold, their murmurs swell almost imperceptibly, a gentle undulation of voices and rustling silk that feels less like sound and more like a slow exhalation from the depths of the stone columns. The weight of their silent clocks drapes over your shoulders like a heavy shawl, pulling tight the fabric of the moment. You stretch your eyes toward the darkened entrance, seeking forms you cannot quite see, shadows that fold and unfold themselves, as if stirred by the faintest breath. Another piece moves forward under your touch, wood scraping against wood, with a slow, deliberate cadence that matches the pulse throbbing behind your ribs. You can almost feel the texture of the board beneath your nails, the tiny ridges worn smooth by countless plays, the faded hieroglyphs carved deep into the lifeblood of the wood, catching the flickering flame like whispers on the tongue of memory. This game is no longer mere ritual. It is a slow unfolding, the cracks between moments widening into an ominous invitation. You lean closer, the quiet scent of dry earth and distant reeds weaving itself through the lifeblood of incense and dust, grounding you in a present heavy with unseen demands. The rough stone floor presses insistently against your soles. Gold seeps upwards, threading through your toes and settling in the core of your body like the slow pulse of ancient tides. Sweat builds in tiny pools at your temples, cool and unwelcome, a silent reminder of the fragile line you tread. The voices beyond grow, threading themselves through the silence like a restless undercurrent, a slow chanting, distant yet insistent, offering no comfort but softening the heavy stillness. Your chest rises and falls in tandem with the fading echoes, each breath a measured step deeper into this suspended world. An almost imperceptible breeze slips through the cracks beside the columns, feather light and cold against your overheated skin, drawing goosebumps along your arms. You feel it then, the shift. Something moves in the corner of your vision, a shape barely formed, gesturing from the depths where the torchlight fails to reach. The air thickens around your skin. The heavy hum of watchful eyes cascades over you in waves. Your heart, steady moments ago, flutters as if caught in a slow current beneath the surface, echoing the uncertainty that coils around your fingers. Your hand trembles as it reaches for a piece. The motion is drawn out, hesitant, the sound of wood on wood, a whisper against the stone's cold song. The piece settles, a soft clack that punctuates the stillness, ringing faint and clear like an ancient bell tolling in a forgotten temple. For a moment, the chamber breathes with you, the tension binding tighter, a silken thread spun from shadow and expectation. The murmuring rise swells subtly, folding into your bones, twisting slow and deliberate, like the bending of old vines. You catch your breath, keenly aware of the weight anchoring your skin to the moment, as the dark shape edges forward. Its presence, both a promise and a warning, as if the darkness itself had softened its step to speak at last. The faint gleam of something metallic catches the firelight, hidden but not hidden entirely, suspended in the breathless pause. The watchers press in closer, silent but potent, their collective will a tide that pulls the ritual beyond mere plays and chants to the cusp of revelation. Your eyes meet that darkness, and time sharpens into crystal clarity. The next move is no longer yours alone. It will be the thread to unravel the shadows or be swallowed by them. And in the quiet thrum of the chamber, you know this: the game is no longer about survival. It is about what waits beneath the surface, waiting for your hand to reach out. You keep your hand suspended above the board, the faint tremor in your fingers, a quiet echo of the chamber's slow heartbeat. Between your skin and the worn wood of the Senet pieces, there is a subtle friction, rough and familiar, like the grain of a time-worn path traced by centuries of cautious minds. The torchlight flickers gently, casting overlapping shadows that curl and stretch against the cracked stone walls, creating a soft dance of light and dark. that seems to breathe with a measured rhythm. Your bare feet press against the cold, uneven floor, a patchwork of tiny fissures and chips, each one a silent relic of forgotten footsteps. You shift slightly, feeling the chill seep upward like a slow river, grounding you in the immediate and sharp contrast to the weight of invisible eyes pressing softly against your back. The scent of dry earth and lingering incense mingles with the faint musk of sweat clinging to your skin, wrapping you in a subtle stew of past and present. The peculiar stillness does not waver, thickening as your gaze drifts to the marble columns framing the chamber's entrance. Their smooth surfaces are mottled with ancient stains and etched with hairline cracks, streaks of ochre fading into deep browns that hint at the slow passage of countless rituals. Beyond them, the shadowed spaces seem to consolidate, shifting imperceptibly, as if gathering will and breath from the unseen crowd. The quiet murmur rises gently like the distant tide creeping toward a shore. Soft rustles of fabric, the faint scrape of sandals, whispers caught on the wind, curling through narrow crevices. You allow your fingers to lightly brush over the polished bone dice again. Their coolness, a fleeting comfort amidst the tension. They roll slowly between your fingertips, weighted and deliberate, before settling back on the board. The little bones clatter softly, a fragile chorus ringing out in the heavy silence like a delicate bell tolling far off in the depths of night. The numbers revealed offer no reassurance, only the gentle tightening of the chest, the quiet coil of anticipation winding ever tighter around your every fiber. Your hand moves methodically, sliding a piece forward in a slow, deliberate scrape that fills the chamber more fully than the gentle clatter of dice. The sound resonates on the stone, a muted call to the vast presence wrapped tightly in shadow beyond the torch's reach. You sense the watchers exist not merely as ghosts, but as orchestrators of this unease, patient and relentless as the desert winds outside. The flicker of a shadow in the corner of your vision pulls your breath taut. You do not flinch, but your heart hammers softly against ribs suddenly too small. A whisper of movement threads through the air, the faintest rustle of fabric, the subtlest press of weight shifting on stone. It ripples outward, pressing gently against your skin, like a slow brush of velvet. You hold your breath with the watchers, your chest rising and falling in measured cadence. The stale air tastes faintly of dust and sweat, wrapped in the distant trace of withered papyrus and resinous incense. Sweat gathers along your temple, cool and unyielding, mingling with the gritty dust that clings to your eyelashes and upper lip. The game on spools between your hands, the shuffling of worn wood pieces, crawling across faded glyphs scratched deep into the board. The narrow squares, geometric paths worn soft by endless repetition, shimmer dimly under the wavering light, their indistinct outlines stirring faint recollections of long-lost prayers and cautious hopes. Each move is an echo, each scrape a breath, the slow uncoiling of time itself within this chamber's relentless stillness. Your senses sharpen, the air holds, a current, a subtle vibration threading through the silence, a gathering storm held in quiet suspension. The murmurs swell, intricate and intertwined, weaving suspense into the fabric of the night like a quiet chant reverberating off marble and stone. You catch a faint pulse beneath your skin, the collective breath of the watchers, the silent tick of an unseen clock, counting down the moments left to unfold. As your fingers rest lightly on another piece, the shadows near the entrance deepen and thicken, folding into themselves like dense ink spreading across cracked parchment. The air cools, heavy and slow-moving, wrapping tendrils around your arms and neck, pressing in with gentle but unyielding weight. A tremor edges along your spine, an ancient chill that settles deep within your marrow, pulling you further into the ritual's dark embrace. Your hand slides forward with careful intent, the sound a delicate murmur, wood drawing softly against wood, the faintest touch of history etched through each slow, painstaking gesture. The entire chamber seems to inhale in that moment, the silence stretching taut, answering your move with a soundless gasp. The watchers close in around you, invisible but palpable, threading their presence through the cold stone and flickering flames, as if to claim you wholly. Suddenly, at the edge of perception, something shifts. A subtle break in the pattern of breath and shadow, but delicate fracture in the veil of stillness. The corner of your eye catches a glint, silent and fleeting, something metallic that shimmers for a blink before disappearing back into darkness. It is a promise wrapped in mystery, cool as the traits of night and sharper than any blade. The murmuring rises deeper now, forming a slow crescendo of anticipation that coils through the chamber like a living entity. Your fingertips linger, the weight of the moment thick and heavy, before the pieces settle once more in their ancient dance. And then, as if the very air itself had spoken, that shape moves, a figure half-formed from darkness and shadow, stepping slowly into the welcoming embrace of flickering torches. The room tilts subtly, the walls breathing with silent expectation, the game unfolding beyond mere chance. Your breath catches, held fast in the delicate thread stretched taut between now and what will come next. The next move will not be yours alone. You keep your hand lingering just above the Senet ord, the weight of the unseen presence tightening around you like a slow tightening noose. The flickering torchlight wavers, casting long, lapping shadows that tumble and stretch over the worn wood, each movement slipping quietly across the surface like whispered secrets. Your skin feels chilled by the cold stone floor beneath your bare feet, grounding you as the air thickens into something viscous, almost palpable, pressing against every inch of exposed skin. The silence around you hums, barely audible, but persistent, like the faint rustle of silk brushing over marble, or the careful tread of countless sandals threading around the chamber's edges. Somewhere beyond the columns, a slow, collective breath fills the space, a gentle sigh held tight, as if the watcher's gaze were a living weight, unseen but imposed, like the desert sun's relentless heat in deep noon. You shift your focus back to the board, tracing the worn edges of a piece with the pad of your finger, feeling the softened ridges, the tiny splinters caught like memories beneath your skin. The dry scrape of wood on wood breaks the breathless quiet as you slide the piece forward. The sound soars unexpectedly, reverberating like a muted bell toll beneath vaulted stone. Your chest rises and falls, slow and measured, the rhythm steady, despite the thudding tremor in your fingers. There's a tension here that is quiet but insistent, threaded through every breath, every hesitant movement. The pieces do not simply mark progress. They seem to inscribe your very fate into the dusted air. A gentle draft slips through the marble columns, curling across your arms, like a whispered caress or a cold brush of silk, sharp enough to raise goosebumps, but soft as dawn's first light. The scent of dry earth, mingled with faint incense and something raw and metallic, fills your nostrils and clings to the hollow of your throat. You swallow slowly, the taste clinging, a reminder of the thin, fragile line between presence and oblivion. The dice rest suddenly heavier in your palm, impossible to hold with ease despite their familiar shape. You roll them once more, the small bones scattering with a fragile clatter that echoes like distant rain on stone. The numbers revealed do not offer reassurance, only a slow, simple path. Sleep creates big dreams, and he helps you remember one final thing. I feel better now than I did 5 years ago. I come and gather myself up. I take you on journeys through life. I take you on indefinite journeys. Been finding things too You'll find yourself more sleepy, feel more tingly, and a bit better than you could have imagined. Help feel better than just reaching for permits to place the hidden pieces. Creeping tightening that coils around your rib cage like a chamber, like a slow, low chant. The shadows slither again, thickening, folding over themselves with a restless, fluid motion, drawing closer as if alive. You feel the gaze of countless eyes, unseen but unanimous. Watchers bound by unspoken pact, their breath collective and impossible to discern, pressing gently against your spine. Your breath is slow, deliberate, a protest against rising tension. But beneath your skin, something quickens, an ancient pulse folding into your veins with a force both subtle and overwhelming. The faintest shimmer of movement beckons at the edge of your vision, a shape coalescing from the darkness, slower than a heartbeat, heavier than shadow. It holds silence like a cloak, a deliberate stillness that swallows space and time. You lean forward, drawing your breath into your chest, the air thick and fragrant with dust and the faint, acrid smoke of past offerings. Sweat trickles cool and unyielding down your temple and along the curve of your neck. You taste the ancient dust on your tongue, heavy and dry, a bitter tether to forgotten days and slow-moving stars. Then, without haste or abruptness, your hand moves, pushed forward by a will deeper than fear. Sliding a piece across the board with a whisper-soft shush, the sound cuts sharp through the stillness, as if the chamber itself inhaled sharply, and then everything pauses, pregnant with expectation. The shadows suddenly deepen further, pulling together like thick tar, pooling in the corners of the room. The presence you sensed before now steps fully into the torchlight's reach, revealing a figure draped in dark folds, its movements so slow it seems measured in centuries. The air tightens, folding around you, both with a binding hum that resonates inside your bones, an echo of a long-forgotten song. Your pulse pounds beneath the skin of your wrist, a steady drum against your will, urging calm even as it quickens. The murmurs beyond swell to a low crescendo, voices entwining into a quiet, chanting resonance that thrums through stone and marrow alike. The game has shifted. It is no longer a mere contest of chance or will. In that suspended breath, your eyes fix on the figure's hand, outstretched toward the board, a glint of metal catching the torchlight. Cold and sharp, it reflects a promise wrapped in shadow, something ancient and binding. The watchers draw closer still, the heavy web of silent gazes wrapping tighter, as if to tether the very air itself. Your hand remains poised, trembling, caught in the fragile stillness between what was, what is, and what must come next. The next move will carry weight beyond the game's slow rhythm. It will unlock a door long sealed, a whisper buried deep beneath layers of dust and time. And in the venomous hush of that chamber, you know, without a shred of doubt, that when your fingers finally close around the piece again, the balance will tilt forever. You lower your hand slowly, letting the tension recede from your arm, like a gentle tide rolling de volta a praia. The shadows that had clung so tightly now begin to loosen their grip, dissolving silently into the warm flicker of torchlight. The chamber feels lighter somehow, as if exhaling after a long-held breath. Your fingers linger on the worn wood of the Senet board, tracing one last time the faded hieroglyphs that have witnessed countless stories. Woven through centuries of quiet ritual. Beyond the marble columns, the murmurs soften, a gentle retreat, not unlike the hush of a river settling after a storm. The unseen watchers, once pressing in close like a tide of invisible eyes, release their silent hold, their anticipation finally eased. You allow your breath to flow freely, deep and even, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet ground you firmly in this fleeting moment of calm. Your gaze drifts upward, catching the first hesitant glow softening the horizon beyond fixed stone walls. The sun, weary but unrelenting, begins its slow climb, casting ribbons of pale gold that melt the lingering shadows. A breeze, delicate and unhurried, slips through the columns, bringing with it the scent of dry earth and river reeds, a reminder that the world outside the chamber continues to breathe. Long after the game has paused, the dice rest quietly on the board, lifeless now, their smooth bone surfaces cool and familiar beneath your touch. You slide one final piece forward with the gentlest of touches, its soft scrape a whispered farewell to the ritual's slow dance. The sound empties into the chamber, filling the space with a peaceful stillness that feels like an unspoken benediction. You pause, eyes closing briefly to drink in the sensation, the mingling scents, the faint hum of stone settling, the subtle warmth spreading through your chest like the first glow of dawn. The weight that had pressed upon you, a shroud woven from unseen gazes and whispered breaths, lifts entirely, replaced by a serene clarity. The game, with all its hidden perils and silent watchers, has reached its quiet end. In this hour, you feel a profound kinship with every hand that has moved these pieces before. Players whose lives and fates curved around this very ritual, their hopes and fears folded into the grain of the board. Their stories, once distant echoes, now hum softly in unison, a low lullaby of time itself closing a chapter. The chamber's air cools further, gentle and soothing, as if rinsing away the tension that had built like ancient sediment. Your bare feet flex against the stone, the chill, a crisp caress, grounding you to this moment of completion. You breathe again, slower now, more measured, each breath a wave washing through a quiet shore. Outside, the first birds call softly, their calls fragile but certain, a natural benediction to the new day's beginning. The marble columns gleam faintly, bathed in early light that reveals the intricate textures carved by centuries of hands, hands like yours, holding steady, moving pieces with reverence and resolve. You stand, the rhythm of your heartbeat easing into a calm cadence, as if the chamber itself has slowed alongside you. Stepping back from the board, you let your hands rest at your sides, feeling the cool, timeless stone press gently through your skin. The air is crisp, filled now with possibility, the ancient game's weight lifted transformed. A last, lingering glance at the Senet board reveals the quiet geometry of worn squares and faded symbols, no longer obstacles or threats, but silent witnesses of your passage through this nocturnal trial. The ritual has ended, its secret murmurs folding into the expanding light. As you cross the threshold between stone and open air, the world outside greets you not with peril, but with the soft promise of renewal. The sun spreads warmth across your skin, chasing away chill and shadow with slow insistence. The scent of dry earth and fresh beginnings fills your lungs, mingling with the fading trace of incense and dust. You walk forward, the sound of your footsteps gentle against the smooth stone, each step a rhythm, marking the close of a long night. Behind you, the chamber fades into quiet, its mysteries folded beneath layers of time, dissipated in space, safe and secret once more. There is peace here, soft, deep, and unhurried, as if the world itself has paused to breathe alongside you. The burdens once tangled tightly now rest loose and light, like autumn leaves drifting on a calm river. And here, in the delicate silence that follows, your mind can finally rest. The ritual, the watchers, the ancient game, all have found their place in the great unfolding tapestry of time. No shadows linger at the edges of your vision, only the gentle glow of dawn stretching wide, inviting you into a tranquil, steady light. As you close this chapter, the quiet warmth of acceptance settles over you, a balm for weary bones and restless thoughts. The slow pulse of the day ahead beats steady and sure beneath your skin, carrying you forward as the chamber's secrets return to silence. You inhale once more, feeling the calm bloom within, and let the gentle quiet cradle you, soft as a whispered promise, as enduring as the stones beneath your feet. This is the closing note of an ancient song, sung softly through the pulse of time. And with that final breath, you step out, your heart unburdened, ready to rest.